Hello, Dr. William Berger here from Northeast Medical Practice. I wanted to take a minute to discuss with you a hot button topic, a really newsworthy subject, which is the medical use of peptides. And here I'm referring to peptides that are not FDA approved for medical indications. So this kind of gray market source for peptides has really exploded lately, particularly through social media. And I wanted to take a minute to discuss what the potential risks might be of doing this. So first of all, what is a peptide? And peptides are simply chains of amino acids being the building blocks of proteins. And peptide medications have been around for quite a long time, insulin being the very first one developed. And of course, now we have glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonist medicines, or GLP-1s, and the family related to them. These are also peptide medications, but they are very rigorously studied in clinical trials, undergo FDA approval, and then because they're FDA approved medications, they're also being monitored for any adverse effects once they're in use among patients in the public. So not only have they been rigorously studied for their safety, for their efficacy, and to determine their appropriate dosing, indications, etc., but there is a formal process in place for reporting of adverse effects. So if there are any that are significant, they will be found over time. For the peptides that I'm referring to, and these are things like BPC 157, TB 500, ipamorelin, and many others, these compounds have largely been only tested in either in vitro or animal studies. BPC 157, there is a small 30-patient pilot human study. However, no phase 2 clinical studies for any of these medications. And so therefore, many people, maybe hundreds of thousands of people, could be taking these medicines, but we really don't have any understanding of their safety, their efficacy, or what they might do to people down the road. So I've already alluded to the fact that most of these medications at best have animal studies supporting their use. Ipamorelin for improved muscle tension, that's just in a mouse study. GHK copper is in vitro only, laboratory only, no clinical data for its musculoskeletal uses. So really lacking data. And also because these medications are coming from gray market sources, they don't necessarily meet standards of purity or lack of contamination that might be found with FDA-regulated medications. Some studies have found that the purity can range between 5 and 75% for these medications, and that contaminants like arsenic and lead can be above the legal limits for these medicines as well. And as I mentioned too, we don't have the infrastructure in place to search for and record and report these kinds of any adverse effects from these medicines like we do for FDA-approved medications. So there's really an awful lot of safety risk here. And, often patients are concerned, come to me, they might not want to start a statin medication for their cholesterol or because of things they've read about potential side effects online. But these are very rigorously tested medications around for decades. So we have a lot of data. It's not to say there are no adverse effects from them, but in most cases, the benefits outweigh the risks. But speaking of benefits and risks, you can't really have an informed consent conversation with a patient talking about risks, benefits, alternatives of any particular medication or treatment if you don't know what the risks are. And we really don't in this case. So in my opinion, we should be waiting to before we use these sorts of compounds in patients. They may hold a great deal of promise. They may actually yield great benefits, but they need to go through the appropriate clinical studies first. Because as a physician, I'm meant to first do no harm, as per my Hippocratic oath. So in order to really understand benefits versus risks, we need a lot more clinical studies of these medications. This certainly can be done. There's a huge demand for the kinds of things that they are purported to do in terms of wound healing, for example. But we really need to do the work and show not just that they're effective, but also that they're safe. So before you consider using any of these compounds, I advise that you speak to a physician and get their opinion about the safety of them. And in general, it's a matter of buyer beware at this point if you're going to try to obtain anything that's for research purposes only. Then it has absolutely not been FDA approved for use in human beings as a medication, and those things should be avoided. If you'd like to learn more about what we can offer you to help optimize your health, we are Northeast Medical Practice in Great Neck, New York on Long Island. The number in the office, 516-604-3418, online at northeastmedicalpractice.com, through our various social media outlets, as well as our YouTube channel and my LongevityMD podcast on Spotify, where I interview physicians and other clinicians regarding topics about health optimization. But until we see each other next time, be careful out there and be in good health.